Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday Night Breakdown. Daniel Routledge and Dave Forrester with you to go through all of the action, or at least some of the action,
Mhm.
from the weekend in Super League basketball. Don't mind me, Dave. I'm just going to take a sip from my personalised water bottle here that I have. Ah,
Is it yours or is it somebody else called Daniel, some 7-year-old that you stole it from?
no, no, this was a gift, Dave.
A
A
gift.
gift. Have you seen my little keyring as well, Dave, with my name on? I'm
Uh,
assuming it's a handmade by CLG Crafts, which is newly established. I'm assuming you can find that on
are we now
Etsy
officially,
or product placement now, Dave.
are we pimping ourselves out, are
We
we?
are, yeah. I got a lovely gift from Charles, Roman, and Scarlett and a Christmas card. So I have
I'm
to say
proud.
thank you. And
I'm
also, our little mate, I got this as well from our little mate Oliver. Look at that. It's a
Oliver,
beer, obviously, but it's
a
got a
beer with a
Cheshire
hat on.
Phoenix hat.
A beer with a Cheshire Phoenix hat
Yeah,
on.
I missed out
Right.
on the cakes at Leicester.
Yeah, I gather they were flying around.
Mm,
Fortunately, Geordies are tight,
mm.
and we don't seem to be doing any of that nonsense. Well, we
Well,
didn't have a game on Friday for our fans to surprise me. I don't imagine.
laden you with
Right.
gifts.
Yeah, unlikely.
Well, I say publicly thank you to everybody. It's unsurprised or very surprising, and undeserved. I think is probably what it is. But
Oh, I think we
I
can certainly
appreciate
agree
it,
on the
guys.
latter. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Shall we talk some basketball?
yeah, absolutely.
Let's start on Friday night with the league game. Surrey 89ers 86. It will happen. It will happen.
Yeah.
Manchester basketball. Nearly said Giants there. I don't know where that came from. Manchester basketball 79. Um, Obviously, all change at Manchester. Ian DeBose is in, Elijah Effigy, I think it is.
FJ, yeah.
Eric Williams Jr. is in. Can I just firstly commend him for being a junior, because there is nothing more annoying for people with spreadsheets than having two players with the same name. And obviously, there was an Eric Williams for Leicester in the early 2000s. So that junior is a massive godsend to me.
Was that not Eric Williams at Sheffield, or was that a different Williams a couple of years ago? Eric
There
Williams
must
is
have been a different. Dirk Williams was at
that
Sheffield. I
one
remember
there
that.
because there's one that's signed for a few weeks. Anyway, yeah. Oh, well, congratulations, Junior.
Yes, and we assume Ali Ali is gone as he wasn't there. I saw your question, Dave. I believe Cody John is British
Yeah,
Canadian, by
Cody
the
John's
way.
British.
Yeah.
I'm fully aware, and Donovan Mitchell is Irish, and
Mm.
under the nonsensical rules that we have, if you're Irish Australian, you count as British.
Oh,
Even
by the way, the other thing I learned was Owen McCormack is of Scottish heritage, not Irish.
that, well, with the hair, yeah, you
Yeah,
can see that there's a bit of Braveheart going on there,
yeah.
isn't there?
You were calling him Irish last week when you poo-pooed my Louis Walsh joke.
Ah, well, sorry. Well, there you go. So he's a Scot,
Yeah.
but not a real, not enough of a Scot to be British. Um, no, I mean it is a kind of a wider kind of tale, and it's perfectly fair on the clubs to be doing whatever they can to maximise the talent they can get on the court. Got no problem with that under the rules that we've got. But at some point in time, our rules have to be coordinated for the assistance of the benefit of the national team program as well. There has to be something there. And we're at the point now where we have 3 or 4 teams with 7 imports,
Mm.
effectively, or 7 guys who can't play for GB, if I can
Yeah,
put it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that doesn't leave many minutes for people who can. Um, so I think it does need to be reviewed moving forwards, and particularly some of the kind of the exceptions that seem to grow, as I say, week by week, year by year. But yeah, so the Cody John is, I was aware Cody John was British, Donald Mitchell Irish, and Ali Ali, yes, has just disappeared into the ether without as much
Mm,
as a press release or a thank you.
mm,
Seems a little bit harsh. He didn't do
mm.
much wrong from what I can see.
I didn't even see a line of in related move as
Yeah,
we used to get
I
a
mean,
lot
to
of.
be fair, I mean, he got about as much attention from the press, obviously, he did from the rest of the team who wouldn't pass him the
Mm.
ball. So I didn't see that. Yeah, I didn't see he did that much wrong. It does balance him a little bit more. DeBose is obviously solid, provided he's healthy. He's a really solid player, and it gives them kind of that rotation of Ashton Langford, DeBose, and Meadows. It kind of makes it hard to see where Lewis and John are going to fit in apart from kind of spot minutes. KO is obviously, a really solid three guy, Mitchell four, and Effigy, we just better hope he doesn't get lost in the
Well,
fire.
welcome to the UK, Mr. Applegate. 2 fouls inside 4 minutes, quick third in the second quarter, fourth in the third quarter, all in 6:25, all probably on the soft side, to be fair. But welcome.
Well, yeah, probably his burning ambition.
Indeed.
Those who are come on,
Oh,
keep
dear.
up.
Uh,
No, yeah, I mean I mean he isn't the level of he doesn't look to have the resume the level of Moore.
mm,
He appears to be kind of an athletic, kind of big guy. Decision making wasn't great in the first couple of games, but you're going to get that. You've got to see what he can bring down the line. I do feel a little bit for Del Pesce. All these guys get brought in and start ahead of him. Yeah,
yeah.
he's been exceptional. He turns up, plays 35 minutes, and we get another guy, and we'll put him in the starting lineup and bench you again. And
Mm,
he's really been very good this year.
mm,
And obviously, they've now got a lot of players,
mm.
which is going to have its own issues moving forward as well. And certainly, I thought kind of did in this game.
Start of the game, Adelkin 6 points, 11-2 start. Manchester then went 10-2 right back. The gap sort of stayed around 6 or 7 points for most of the game in this one. It wasn't until the third quarter that Steel 3 pushed it out to 12, but then Manchester had a 9-0 run. It was back to 3 again.
Yeah, you think you still get the impression there's a lot of stuff for Manchester to improve upon.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
really do. Now, whether they do it or not will probably come down to how they gel, how Callum uses them, how willing they are to listen to him, to be honest. Because we've got that much kind of talent in those minutes, it's very easy to get into kind of the me mentality as opposed to the we mentality as to where am I going to get mine?
Mm,
And you can't, for instance, in this game, they didn't shoot the ball well to start with. Nick Lewis came in with 2 minutes to go in the first quarter and bang bang, a couple of threes. He's getting his shots up, you
mm.
know, because he knows he's not going to be playing as many minutes, so
Yeah,
he can
yeah.
get his shots up. And Mounts and that is going to be an issue because there are days when they'll go in and there'll be days when they aren't. You've got to decide which players are you going to use. Similarly with Dubose, is Dubose going to be the point? Is he going to be a two? Because they've got three guys who like to handle really.
Mm,
Midot, Dubose and Ashton Langford. So so they've got lots of things to sort with them. And they don't have a tremendous respect for the opposition, from what I can see, individually.
mm,
And what I mean by that is the opposition kind of get the shots that they want. And Josh Steele knocked down some shots in this game. Adelican got around the rim and was able to score there. For a big team, Manchester's intangibles, and we don't, they're kind of tangible intangibles, really, but they're intangibles this year in relation to kind of the nitty-gritty stuff, the rebounding, the screen roll defense. They haven't been great. They've been losing on the boards
mm,
despite all the size that they've got. They've been losing the assist turnover battle, because they're at the moment quite individualistic. And it's December now, so you've changed the lineup again. You've added an extra guard to make things flow a little bit more. Um, so now the test is, can they mix? Can they work? And we'll see is the answer, I suppose. Surrey were what they were. I mean, Josh Steele knocked down shots. When Josh Steele scores 16 points in 30 minutes, they're going to win. If Josh
mm,
Steele doesn't score 16 points, they may not win.
mm,
Um, and they are skilled. They're a tough team to guard. Sorry, Stu said after one of the games 3 weeks ago, he says one of the hardest teams to plan against, to guard against, because they move the ball and they're consistent in what they do. They're not very spiritable though at the moment. They don't have that kind of athleticism to kind of do a Cheshire and take a game away from you in like three
mm,
minutes. They tend to give up stuff as well. But yeah, in this game, I mean, I was unfortunate. I only watched the games without knowing the score, but I caught the score of this game. I was out Friday night and I caught it by accident. So I kind of lose a little bit of interest when I know the score. It's difficult.
mm, mm.
But even knowing the score, I never really got the impression that there was a run around the corner for Manchester.
No, I didn't get that impression watching it live. James I was actually more concerned that Surrey would give it away than Manchester would take it away, if that makes
Right.
sense. James with 10 points in a 13-4 run pushed it back to 78-66, and it was relatively drama-free for an evening at
Yeah, that's right. And
SSP.
s- it was for Surrey, yeah.
Mm,
And I suppose that's your kind of your benchmark to moving up the tiers in the league, isn't it? If you can win a home game drama free
Mm,
in this league, there's only 9 teams, so there's only so many teams you're going to beat drama free at home. And Surrey haven't won many games drama free because they haven't won many games
mm,
past couple of years. But they're at that point now whereby they are more gelled as a team, undoubtedly, than Manchester are, probably with less individual talent. They're an import down with Brown. They're still playing Parkinson, who made a couple of plays in this game,
mm,
and Cholovinskis as well. So they're playing the young British guys. And Bacali, and they ran out of lineup with Hunt and Bacali in this game.
mm,
So they're mixing and matching a little bit, trying things out as they go. They put Bacali in the middle of the zone, which I thought was smart because he struggled in the screener role against the man-to-man, and just all this point of the season on the road, togetherness is what wins you games, and they had it more than Manchester did.
mm. Adelakun, 20 points, 9 of 9 shooting and 10 rebounds. That is I wrote this down. Obviously, you'll get
Yeah.
an update later on, but I wrote this down at the time. The most made field goals without a miss by anybody since Checkham Johnson, 10 for 10 for the Scorchers against Sheffield in
And that is
March
it's
2023.
kind of interesting that, but that's kind of indicative of Surrey's system. You
Mm,
know, you know, the system with the big guy is expected to catch the ball around the rim and finish.
mm,
And the big guy has the ability to do that. One, because they're good and he picks the right guys to do that, but also because the spacing is so pristine around them, which means that they don't really have to deal with more than their own defender.
mm,
Or they catch the ball on the screen and roll, and they've got good footwork. So yeah, it was Shackham Johnson, who, if you remember, was kind of an athletic, kind of rolling
mm,
big, who could dunk it a little bit and finish around the rim. And Delican is slower but similar.
mm.
He's more sure-footed. He's got better footwork. And if you give him the ball, out of those 9 shots, and the 11, I didn't see the 11 he made the next night, but out of those 9 shots, he probably made them from a combination of about 12 feet.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And that's because he's getting the ball in the right places.
yeah.
And the offense is set up for that. So you have to kind of pick your poison. And if you're giving up a Delican 20 points on 9 shots and you're giving steel threes, you're getting poisoned everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. James, 17 points, 10 rebounds, still 5 of 6 shooting for 16 points.
16 points on six
Yeah,
shots.
yeah.
Delican 20 points on 9 shots, 36 points on 15 shots. That's your game.
Mm, mm. But at 16.7 rebounds, KO 13.3 of 11, by contrast, 11 rebounds. Mitchell and Williams both had 12. They both had 10, by the way.
Yeah,
Uh,
Williams looked interesting. He looked he wasn't shy.
mm,
He made some shots and made some plays and made some off the dribble and all sorts of stuff. And I kind of thought, oh, he can play. And I thought, oh, he's another mouth to feed.
mm,
Did they need another guy did they need another guy who can score off the dribble, who can play in that way, who can make plays? Because they're not short of them. Probably
no.
more than any team in the league at the moment. So it's how they blend who's willing to take a back seat and space the floor and knock down open shots. And because there's a real risk that that team turns into kind of your turn, my turn, your turn,
Mm.
his turn, and it becomes very individualistic.
Surrey up to 5th for the first time since January 2020. And obviously, I'm going to Scorchers history for that.
Mhm.
Right, Dave. I've written all the cup games down in a row,
Yeah,
and I've got a paragraph or two. I was just going to throw a bit of detail out for people.
throw some
Yeah, throw
meaningless
some meaningless
split-second
numbers
triple
because obviously none
double.
of us have seen it.
Yeah,
But if you wanted to interject with anything you noticed,
yeah.
or just let me run,
I'll
you
let you
go
go.
for
I
it.
think. Yeah, keep going.
So we'll start Friday. Essex Rebels 70, Bristol Flyers 84. Essex actually led for decent spells in the first half of this one. Obviously, some names that BBL fans would know with Luke Basumbro, Joe Hart, Daniel Johnson Thompson. Um, Bit of a regression to the mean game for Keedy Johnson, or the level
Yeah,
wasn't inspiring
yeah.
enough, or whatever. They kind of pulled away in the third quarter, and Robinson, 22 points, 9 of 11 shooting seemed to be.
Yeah, I mean
Seemed to be.
the kid for Essex Canway, who was at
Mm,
Newcastle University for a while. He was kind of a big body. I've watched him a couple of times. He's had 17 points, so he's still relatively young and quite an interesting prospect. Um, the difficulty with all of these kind of relatively close SBL Div 1 games is that um, you have to assume that the Div 1 teams are giving it their best shot, and the SPL teams or SLB teams maybe aren't quite giving it their best shot, particularly Bristol, given the schedule
Yeah.
that they've been in. And on top of that, with the home advantage as well, if it becomes a 15-point game in a one-off situation like that, then it probably puts a gap between the teams on a kind of a generalized full season basis as a little bit more than 15,
Mm.
so it's certainly worthwhile. Um, well, I don't know. These games are worthwhile if there is enough effort made to follow up on them by the
Mm.
various agencies and the various bodies to establish better programs. Because ultimately, the teams that will compete with the SLB teams are teams that have got players with the experience of playing at that level,
Mm.
and they should
Teams
be
like
getting
Essex, you would say.
Like
Yeah.
Essex, like Derby, like Reading. Ultimately more competitive. The names that you see on the stat sheet are ones that have kind of either proven themselves at that level or have played in games against SLB teams before
Mm.
and shown they're kind of at that level.
Mm. Let's go to two that were not quite there. St Mirren 60, London Lions 113. St Mirren led 4-3, and then London scored 14 points in a row, and that was it. Debut for Tyler Peterson. Solid numbers, 5 of 7, 11 points, 4 assists in 15 minutes. Lions' second biggest win since moving to London.
Yeah, no, a little bit about Peterson because we looked at him a couple of years ago at Newcastle in the summer. I think he was a rookie. Um, solid player, come out of kind of tough, kind of competitive point guard, can shoot the ball. Has been playing in Greece, I think. Um, so I don't think he will do them any harm at all. But I have to see him play against the more athletic guys in the SLB first.
Mm.
In relation to everything else, God, let's hope they were getting paid for the mileage.
Mm. Mm. Uh, Falkirk Fury 61, Leicester Riders 130. Ali Fraser, Johnny Bunyan, Bantu Boris. Keith Bunyan was listed, but he didn't play. This was a contest for about 8 minutes. It was 18-22 to Leicester, and then they went on a 25-4 run to lead by 25. That is 130 is the most points Leicester have scored in the Rob Paternostro era, and also his second equaled his second biggest win of all time. And they got 69 points off the bench, 69-8 off the
Well,
in
the
bench points.
depth and athleticism, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know, that's too good.
yeah.
I mean, what you
Saturday.
find is the guy that they can play the scores. As you say, 8 minutes. Some games might be 15 minutes. Some games
Yeah.
might be 17 minutes. Some games might be 5 minutes. It generally the guys who played at that level can play at that level
Mm,
and can hold it together for 7 or 8 minutes. But then when the
mm,
benches come in, it becomes very difficult. Or the starters have to play all the minutes. It's very difficult for the Scottish teams.
mm.
And of course,
Uh,
they're not getting anything like that level of competition on a day-to-day
no,
basis.
no, no. Saturday night, but Funky Town was back. Simon was apparently back doing the PA for that. I understand. So that's a good thing. Get Simon out of retirement. Saturday night, Nottingham Hood 67, Cheshire Phoenix 108. Obviously, Teague and Kristen had been released. Austin is still not back. So basically, they were down to 8 players, and one of those is supposed to be retired in Jack
But
Hudson.
yeah,
Nottingham never led by more than one in the first few minutes, and then Cheshire just sort of motored away from them in the second
I
quarter.
think what Nottingham were 2-8
2-8, yeah, I think so.
in that
Yeah.
league. So Nottingham building. Obviously, Russell's there, and they've
Mm,
got Vladan there as a coach, but they're way ahead of schedule for that type of competition.
mm, mm. Oldham 28 points, 12 of 14 free throws. Uh, Derby Trailblazers. Here's the closest one of the round thus far. Obviously, Hem will play next week against Manchester. Derby Trailblazers 88. 89ers 93. 4 points under, 4 points over. 3 points under, 4 points over. Mo Walker, Raheem May Thompson, Rob Marsden, Jonas Dietrich. Loads of familiar names in this one, but I understand Leighton Elliott Sill was rested for this one. He obviously leads the NBL in scoring 23 and a half points per game, but they obviously had their National Cup semi-final on Sunday, so that's obviously a big chunk of their offense.
Yeah, also Malcolm Smith, who's previously dropped 30 on
Mm.
Plymouth and maybe Caledonia.
Somebody just asked me what his numbers are against SLB BBL teams, so I've literally just done it. 29 after this game, 29.4 points per game and 7.2 rebounds per game in
So they
five
got
games.
proven talent at that level, proven competitiveness at that level, and they're coming up against Surrey, who are probably one of the less athletic teams
Mm,
in the SLB. You would say that they've got the guards are small, they don't have a kind of a leaper on the wing. But obviously they've got Adelican who's 6'7" and or 6'8" and skilled and James. So it was kind of as good a matchup for Derby as you could get, give sort of
mm,
playing the night before. And obviously then they get to play in 3,000 lines on the court
mm,
and make it blue just to absolutely finish it off. And create that kind of experience. Um, but even then, even with all of that and running it down to the wire,
mm.
um, and getting contributions from most of the guys, yeah, they couldn't quite get there.
No. Derby had a 7-1 start in this. Most of the game they were in front. Surrey finally got a bit of a lead in the fourth quarter, but didn't lead by more than four until the last 90 seconds of the game. Lawrence with four free throws, a 5-0 run in the last minute, secured the win.
Yeah, I mean it's a good win for Surrey, but they have to win. They're a professional
Mm,
team. Derby's a
mm,
semi-professional team.
yeah.
I'm not saying that doesn't mean it hasn't happened in the past, and it can happen, but it shouldn't happen.
Mm. Delicum, we've sort of trailed it already. 11 of 11 for 27 points, 13 rebounds, and a 37 index rating. In the live stats era, which is since 2008, nobody's ever gone a combined 20 for 20 in consecutive games. The most that anybody had done prior to Delicum this weekend without missing a field goal was Patrick Tape. In
Mhm.
December 2022, he went 6 of 6 and 8 in consecutive games, although they're about 5 days apart. And only 17 players have ever made even five field goals without a miss in consecutive games. So quite a weekend. Let's do the cup game on Sunday as well, and then we'll go back to the league action. Reading Rockets 72, Sheffield Sharks 84. This one was close for about, we were talking about earlier, close for about 15 minutes, 30-29 mid second quarter. But Sheffield 26 points against two 3-pointers, and 9 minutes later it's 36-55 and basically done. Oh,
Yeah,
Matthews was back as well for
yeah.
Sheffield in
Matthews was
this
back. That
weekend.
was a
Yeah.
nice game for him to get some reps in. Yeah, and Sheffield kind of spread the minutes across as well. Um, but that's the problem. These SLB teams are spiritable. They can put up points in a hurry, and to play with them at a certain level all the way is tough. And even if you do play with them at a certain level, you still end up losing by seven, or eight. And when they have their one run, that's it. Then you're not coming back from 19 down.
Mm. So let's go back to the games that we were able to see and start on Sunday with Leicester Riders 89, Newcastle Eagles 65. Before we get into the game, Rob Paternostro, 500th career win as a head coach in this country. He's only the third person ever to reach that landmark. Fab Flanoy, obviously you were aside Fab for many of them, and Paul James. But Rob actually beat Fab by 5 games in terms of getting to 500, so he was the
Mm.
fastest of all time.
Good job, Rob. I can't say any more than that. It's a good job. He's done a fantastic job. He's on the Mount Rushmore, isn't he?
He is, and it's probably slightly more fitting to do it against Newcastle at home than St Mirren away, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the St Mirren away counts is probably a bit of a sorry. Okay, but I suppose we beat a couple of teams like that, so I
You
can't.
beat St Mirren, I think, a couple of
Yeah,
times, didn't you?
yeah, I
Yeah.
think, yeah. That might be in this. It's a triple double game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So Newcastle, the first 5 points of the game. Hunter and Jackson 5 points each in a 12-0 run. I was watching this in Cheshire. There were a lot of off the ball fouls, weren't there? There was a lot of stuff going on.
I tweeted after about the halfway through the second quarter. So whilst it was still close, that it was being ref like a netball game. I'm sorry, it was just, and when you went, and I just thought I don't know what the refs were expecting. It was being ref like a game whereby we expect there's going to be a fight any time. Like it wasn't the two teams from last year,
Mm,
you don't have, Taj Green and Caleb Asbury ready to knock
mm,
each other out. I thought it was very, very panicky in relation to some of the stuff that was going on. And when you watched it back, a couple of them as well, because you can see as a you don't, because they're off the ball fouls, you don't see them, so you want to.
mm,
So there might be in that, whereas the ref is looking at it, it's his job to look at it, so he
mm,
sees them, so he calls them, so you can't necessarily complain that. But there's a couple, whereby guys are fighting over screens and stuff
mm.
like that, and you're just thinking, really? Are we really at this kind of thing? 21 fouls in 16 minutes. That said, I think uh, um, Newcastle started the game atrociously, and it wasn't even the fact that even though they scored the first 5 points, they played when they played Leicester last week. They held Leicester at 21 3-point attempts. Um, in this game, the first possession I think was an open three, and then an open three for maybe Johnson. Then, oh, by the way, sorry, Leicester have the most generic names in the history of the British Basketball League. I'm sorry. I mean, give me a Chuck guitar or a Randy Duck any day. You got what? You got Johnson, Thompson,
Jackson, Thompson,
Jackson, Hunter,
Wright.
Shelton, Wright. I mean, Abercrombie gets you half a point.
Mm,
Doc Rob 5 wins for signing them. And Bowman, I mean, dear me. I just looked at it and thought, wow, bland. But then, they play like people who really don't seek to show themselves off.
mm.
They play. I mean, that's it's a bit trite to suggest it's something to do with their names, but you know what I mean. They
Yeah,
they
yeah.
have that kind of unfussiness about them. But you can't. I think they gave up a 3 to Johnson, and then offensive rebound and an open three to Abercrombie.
Mm,
Both missed. Um, but at that point, I'm thinking, and then defensively, I thought they were just all over the place. Just they weren't where they were the week before. And then as the game went on, I began to think that, is this just Newcastle not really showing up, possibly, particularly as there's in another game next week, which is probably more substantial, more significant, or is it just that, this is a Leicester roster which is actually best suited to taking advantage of Newcastle's weaknesses? Because there are some times whereby two teams might have very similar records, but one team might just have the 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 hex on the other team, not necessarily because of how good they are against the rest, but how they match up together. You know, and basically,
Worcester. Are you talking Worcester?
yeah, Worcester used to beat us all the time. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that was
Mm,
PJ though, because he just kind of found a way. But
mm,
even so, in this, actually, the year what I was thinking about, I was thinking about the year that Zaire and Jay Kuzma beat us for everything.
mm,
We just couldn't. We had a good team that year. We got with Huffman and Chapman and Maddox, but we just didn't have the pieces quite to get over the line with that Leicester team, because every time something happened, they were able to, they had more than us. And my concern for Newcastle watching the game through, as it happened, was that Newcastle got nothing out of the point guard spot. Jordan Spencer probably a little bit at being asked to do probably more than he was brought in to do. He was over 4 for 16 in 16 minutes, and they got really very little out of their centre spot. Insofar as I think Malcolm Delpesh had 8 points, but he was a minus 20.
mm,
In the game, and Alan Aikens was minus 25. And Leicester's strength is their point guard and their centre at this point in time, Hunter and Thompson. They are dominating that position, they're dominating that matchup. It's very difficult to beat a team if you're being dominated at the point guard and the centre spot. And Thompson did it obviously without scoring, and Hunter did it by just being in control the whole game. And if you look at the rest of those guys, you would probably say, obviously outside of Jackson, who's as solid a wing as you're ever going to find, you'd probably say if you were to give each of those Newcastle players a ball and put a Leicester player in front of them, you'd feel like the Newcastle player was more likely to score on the Leicester player than the Leicester player was to score on the Newcastle player individually.
mm,
But the way that they fit together around the point guard means that Abercrombie playing off the dribble, Wright playing off the dribble or spotting up, Johnson the same. All those guys are their deficiencies are hidden, athletic deficiencies, whatever, they are hidden um, by the control that the point guard and the centre are having on the game.
Mm.
And particularly, certainly, I would say point guard Hunter from the offensive perspective and Thompson from the defensive perspective.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm looking at it with I'm a little bit fearfully as a fan, thinking, is this Newcastle team got what it takes to score consistently on this Leicester group with um,
Well, they obviously did get
Thompson?
17 up or something last week in the
Well, they were
first half.
50, they scored 58 in the first half, but they jumped on Leicester
Mm.
in that game. They jumped on Leicester big time, and well, I mean, they jumped on him. Their intensity was up. They turned Leicester over. They had 17
Mm.
turnovers in that game. In this game, Newcastle had 16 turnovers, which is just they're never going to win. And I think they're going to have I think they've got. I think it's very going to be very difficult to beat Leicester with that kind of deficiency at the point guard spot if you can't get more production out of Spencer. And obviously, they've tried two Americans in the meantime.
Mm.
In Llewellyn and Bynum, and neither of them is fit, and they've still got a spot. So, they might be looking for another one, but it's just a big hole to fill
Mm.
if you're not getting any kind of screen and roll action out of that. Because I thought Leicester are a really, watching them, Leicester are a really smart team, and I thought they kind of scouted and defended Newcastle's actions really well. And the advantage of having Thompson in the middle against a guy like Del Pesh is that if they're both battling in the middle, there's no space.
Mm.
And so Newcastle have to try and find a way of moving Thompson away from the rim. You've got to get him away out from the rim. And that you're not going to do that if Del is on the court because he's just going to stand there. So therefore, do Newcastle go small and play with a shooter at the five, but then you give up the inside? I don't know, but I thought there were a few kind of tactical puzzles that Newcastle are going to have to solve. The first one is to control Hunter, and the second one is going to be to figure out how to attack Thompson
Mm.
because neither have been very good. So in this game, basically Newcastle could kind of hung around even. Um, Rob changed his kind of rotations a little bit. I
Yeah, he
think
came in
last week
early, I thought,
he
earlier
brought
than
he brought
usual.
Washington in early. He
Yeah.
brought
Brooks came in early as well.
yeah he made a Brooks came in early. I think he made a deliberate effort to kind of get away from kind of just kind of five guys and then the bench,
Mm.
and tried to mix and match them a little bit more, which is actually what he always used to do. If you think he used to have his
Yeah,
sub at
yeah,
the
yeah.
6 minute mark and then out to the 2 minute mark, and then the starters would be back in for the second quarter and they would beat the crap out of the opposition bench. That
Mm.
was his way
Yeah,
of doing it.
yeah.
But that's kind of gone away with kind of the difference out this year. So that was an interesting little tweak he did. Newcastle was searching for stuff in this game, I thought. Um, and even though they made some shots and they made some plays, they never got anything consistent. And it was summed up by the fact, they get the steal and then Aaron Aikens bounces the ball off
Bounce
Jake
off the foot,
two,
yeah.
then it goes back
Hunter
for
hits a
Hunter for a
three.
three. I
Mm.
mean, I thought that the referee clearly should have called a foot violation. Uh, take away three. But seriously, so yeah. And after that, in the second half, really,
Well,
Newcastle, it wasn't a game.
no, Leicester had a 10-2 run to lead 39-28. They're up 9 at half time, and I was kind of watching the second half, expecting the comeback to come because we've seen Newcastle come back so many times this season, but it didn't really. And actually,
I
Leicester
know
were up
they
20 for
lost.
most of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I mean, and on top of that, it was the way it happened. I mean, I thought they got a bit discombobulated. Only the second time this season I've seen Newcastle get discombobulated, which basically means mentally they started making mental mistakes. Now,
Mm.
twice in the second half, in the third quarter, they doubled Thompson in the post.
Mm.
And it's like, okay, they were playing small. He had Aaron Aikens on. At that point in the game, Thompson had not shot the ball. I don't
Mm.
think he shot the ball the whole game.
He didn't.
Right? Right. So they doubled him without much of a plan. It was almost like an instinctive kind of, we got to do something. And like
Mm.
once Coro went and they switched the ball all the way on the other side, and Johnson got three in the corner, which was against what they were doing last time. And then the next time somebody went from the ball handler from Hunter, sort of one pass through, there was no rotations.
Mm.
Thompson just threw it straight back out, and Hunter knocked down the three. And the reason I say that looked like kind of a bit of discombobulation is that that wasn't something they've done much of this season at all. And B, Thompson's not the guy you're going to be doubling.
Mm.
Thompson wants to take three dribbles and even though he's got a size advantage, he wants to take three dribbles and shoot the ball. You're living with that because he hasn't scored the ball in the whole game. You're going to make
Mm.
him make a play. You're not going to let him just be a kind of a passer. So I thought mentally, there was one play when I think that, there was a long rebound and Del Pesce's off running for a fast break, and Leicester got the ball and threw it to Jackson, who Del Pesce just run past,
Mm.
and Jackson made a three. And you think, well, that's your centre. Your centre needs to be back getting the ball as opposed to
Mhm.
to running out at the halfway line, hoping that someone's going to throw it to him. It just seemed that they weren't right there, and maybe I'm looking for excuses. Maybe it was a little bit of the schedule thing, getting to them in relation to the amount of away games they played, and the amount of miles they've done in Europe and all of that stuff. But they had 5 days before the game, albeit I think they drove down on the Sunday, sorry. So, and maybe it was just the fact that it was a middle game and three.
Mm.
It did strike me to be rather ironic that, perhaps Leicester scheduled themselves out of this final.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah. Right.
and
Although
because
to be fair, the semi-final second leg was in the schedule before this game moved to the 15th.
right, okay, but it would have been. I'm sure both teams had accepted, agreed it could have been changed.
Mm.
I'm sure it could have been.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
in
yeah,
any event, I mean, that the game is what the game is. The
yeah.
game is the game, and Leicester absolutely dominated it. What I liked about Leicester though was that I thought they really assessed Newcastle's kind of attack points. I thought they were well scouted, and I think most teams in this league are well scouted, but the key comes whether players can carry out the scouting.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And I think they've got a group there which is pretty diligent in relation to carrying out the things that they need to carry out. And probably the marker in the game was the first 3 minutes, and McCorrow went to the rim off the high screen, and Thompson got a block.
Mm.
Right now, McCorrow's not been blocked by many people this year. On that play. That's been his bread and butter. And the fact that Thompson was able to get up there and change that shot is kind of it shows his athletic capability in changing shots and impacting the middle. So they got to move him out the middle a little bit. It'll be interesting to see what happens next Sunday. As I say, I'm a little bit apprehensive. I'm worried that, from my perspective, from a Newcastle perspective, that Leicester have their number. But I also know Newcastle will come with a little bit more aggression. The question is whether or not they'll be smart enough to be able to defend Leicester the whole time.
Jackson, 20 points. Hunter, 17 points, 8 assists. Some incredible assists in this one as well. Wright, 12, 6 of 9 shooting. 22 fast break points for Leicester, 32 points off the bench. Okoro, 13, Knight, 12, Delpesh and Alan Ikens, 10. They shot 36% from the floor, and they were 3 of 21 from three-point range.
Yeah, they didn't get great looks though either. It's about the quality of the looks that you're getting. And one of the three was a tough shot Okoro made in the first minute.
Mm,
So after that you're at kind of 2 of 20.
mm,
Um, yeah, just they might be reaching that kind of, it might be that not peaked, but they might be reaching that kind of point whereby they're kind of 20 games in now, and teams have seen enough of them, or certainly good teams have seen enough of them to be able to figure out what's coming in. They don't necessarily have an X factor, kind of a Chapman or a um, Matt Morgan, or just a point guard who is going to take the game by the scruff of the neck and say, all right, or Cameron Holden, for instance, and say, look, we need to get a bucket. It's about me. I think they've put that on a Coro for most of the season, and it's a lot. He's had a lot of weight to carry.
mm. Here's a stat for you. Charles Thompson had an index rating of 20 despite attempting 0 field goals. I can only
Hmm.
go back to 2016 for index rating. The next highest with 0 field goal attempts was 6. That was Raf Thomas Edwards. His efficiency rating is 15 for those who care about this sort of thing. Basically, the index takes into account uh, your shots of yours that were blocked and fouls drawn, and F doesn't basically,
Right. Okay.
and therefore I can work F going back to EFF. Going back to 2008, and again the next best from 15 with no field goal attempts was the same game. Raf Thomas Edwards for 6.
Well, I mean, it's rare that a pro player doesn't put a field goal attempt up.
Exactly. Yeah.
Can't have
Yeah.
that much in the way of
Yeah.
kind of sample size. But I've been on the Thompson train for quite a while.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm claiming first dibs on
Oh, I
on
don't know. I think I was there pretty early,
you.
to
You
be
yeah, well, you're
fair.
local. You're local. You're meant to
Fanboying
be.
on Thompson and his
Yeah,
his impressive. It's to me, it's the screen roll defense,
yeah, of
which I know
course it is.
nobody really notices, but
Of course it is.
to
Absolutely.
me,
Well,
that's the thing.
the interesting thing will be to see how Newcastle scheme to get him out of that. I mean, you have other guys set screens. You
Yeah,
put his
yeah.
guy on the wing. There are ways of doing it. He doesn't have to be allowed to stand in there. You
Mm,
set your screen higher up the floor.
mm.
You can set the screen, 4 steps from the halfway line, which would then mean that the guy at the big has to come out a little bit further, and the guard has a running start. There's a lot of ways of doing it, but they're going to have to adjust to it. And I think, to be fair, the rest of the league's going to have to adjust to it as well. This is a different level of screen roll
Yeah,
defense.
and obviously 5 block shots as well. I had a stat about that last night. I think he's like the eighth Leicester player in the time
I'll be
to
honest, I
do
didn't
that.
watch. I mean, I watched the fourth quarter with mild disinterest, but
Mm,
I didn't see the five block shots. I saw one or two, so they'll be there, no doubt. But
mm.
yeah.
Uh, Caledonia Gladiators 76, Manchester Basketball 100, a first win for Manchester. And for those keeping score from that stat I had the other week, this was the 28th game of the season where everybody has won and everybody has lost, which in old BBL terms was the third fastest, equal third fastest from naught to games where everybody's won. And obviously, Caledonia, Teddy Raffle in now as well. Uh, I watched this when I got home last night, and I must admit I was sort of skim watching it while I was doing other things. It seemed like an even start, neither team scoring too freely, relatively tight.
Well, I could write an essay on Caledonia.
Mm.
Probably better not, as I might be commentating them on tonight. Um, in relation to yeah, Manchester beginning to figure it out. They actually got a really good boost from Cody John, who didn't play on Friday night and came in this game and scored the ball. As kind of an extra guard off the bench. Obviously, DeBost was never going to allow them to lose this game either. Um, Caledonia, wow, where to start? I do kind of worry that they're the kind of the gambler who's pushed all the chips into the center of the table and they're holding a pair of twos.
Yeah. Because
Because
again, they can't do anything now.
they're
That's the
effectively,
problem.
looking around the British market
This,
for players and
yeah.
rescued a Corafor, who didn't play, I think played in Cyprus for a little bit last year,
Mm,
but hasn't played for a while. Um, and you've still got Whelan plus Ali Hodzic plus six Okafor plus six Americans. It's not like they're struggling for bodies. But there does seem to be a substantial kind of gap between the guys who come in and the guys who have been there, um, based around the shot selection and kind of it's very difficult in the middle of a season just to start anew
yeah.
because it's not a question of you having your preseason in December. Nobody else is having their preseason.
Mm,
You're being judged not on what you are, being judged against everybody else.
mm.
You're giving everybody else 3 steps start, and so the argument is your
And
talent.
it's that thing of Robbie Pears and Gareth Murray are at opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of the way they coach. So
You would have thought so. I mean, you can't really judge Robbie Pears on 2 games, and we would
yeah, I
judge
suppose
20
yeah,
years ago.
yeah,
And to be fair, they were playing zone by the third possession of this game,
yeah,
and played quite a lot of 2-3 zone in this game, which is a staple of him from 20 years ago. Um, but arguably, you play a very buttoned up way, which is what they did, a very systematic way, where everybody knows where they've got to be, the ball's going to move, and everyone's touching the basketball, and you're kind of trying to feature your better players. You play like that for 3 months, and then you come in and you stop playing like that.
mm,
And you do it by changing half the team, as opposed to by saying we're going to assess the guys that we've got and we're going to have them play in a different way.
mm,
You could say, right, guys, we're going to take the reins off. We're going to let you be a little bit more Hill, the point guard. We're going to let you attack more. We're going to, play you more minutes, whatever. The same with Onwas and Barnes, whatever. We're going to be more flexible about the way that we do things. Just play defense hard and then run up and down and do that. Well, they haven't done that. Now, if they'd done that, they might have kept some of the kind of the team togetherness that you need.
Mm,
What they've instead done is that they've kind of injected in three Americans who are yet to really impress. I mean,
mm,
Wilson Frame is a big guard who likes to shoot threes, which is fine, if the rest of the team is acclimated to that and ready for that. Um, Kane and Dunbar, ooh, at least Wilson Frame carries himself the way I would like a player to carry himself. Kane and Dunbar at this point don't. I mean, Dunbar in the third quarter of this game got a dunk and did the old kind of long stride skipping down the court thing.
mm,
They were down 13
mm,
against a team who was 0-5
mm.
on your own floor. It's your second game. You're not allowed to skip down the court once you hit a dunk. You're certainly not allowed to 30 seconds later pull your shirt and say to the ref, I'm tired. Say to your coach, I'm tired. I need to sub. That to me, that's a massive red flag, you know. And you're looking at the general kind of, also at this point, kind of the marginalization of Whelan, who's your best player,
Mm.
which isn't good either. So, so far, I mean, I'm going to leave it at that for now because it's early to
Yeah.
judge.
Uh,
But yeah, the pair of twos, I might be being optimistic. It may be Jack High.
mm,
Um,
mm.
and in this game, what happened was ultimately, I don't think you can play as much zone as they played. Not the zone that they are playing, but it's simply because teams are too good as shooters
Yeah. So
nowadays.
so Manchester it was 21-17 last couple of seconds of the first quarter. Manchester went on a 24-5 run to lead 26-41. 2 minutes from halftime. Williams was scoring. John had 10 of those 24, including I think they were back-to-back threes. Well, I didn't write it down, but I think they were back-to-back threes.
Yeah,
That was really it.
yeah. Well, they're getting these guys are getting these shots because they're getting loose because Caledonia are giving them up in the zone.
Mm,
So
yeah,
even if you miss the first few, they're going to get into a rhythm. Eventually, they're going to start making them. They're good
yeah.
players. They're pro players. Hughes hasn't been seen for Caledonia since the change. I don't know if he's still there, if he's hurt or anything. Jimenez hasn't been seen.
He's injured.
He's
He's injured.
injured. Okay. Um, and this time I think they started Barnes and Harry Hodzic. In fact, Benny came in for another minute and a half and turned it over a couple of times and never saw him again. And Manchester, it's the first team this year that Manchester have out cohesed. To use a Forest
Yeah,
phrase, I've never
yeah,
come up with it. I just came out of
yeah.
the top of my head. They've and John, to be fair to John, you have got to give him a lot of credit. He didn't play on Friday night.
Mm,
He's probably thinking, what's going on? And then he comes out and he makes a ton of shots and does it. And then KO, if you stand there and let KO shoot threes, I think KO could shoot threes for Christmas. He's a very capable shooter. And Mitchell in the corner and all that stuff. And I just, the too many dead off. And Caledonia have to pick a style. If you're just going to run up and down, you've got to try and play defense. But I don't think running up and down and sitting in a 2-3 zone is going to help you against some of these teams because I think the standard is too good. And so I fear for them.
Wilson Frame 16, Whelan 12, Malcolm 10. They were 26 of 71 shooting. They had 11 offensive rebounds, but only 2 second chance points. KO 23 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists. John 17 points, 5 of 6 shooting. But at 12, 15 of 27 from 3-point line, Manchester.
You see, and what I talked about all year about the most important stat in the game, I think nowadays is the opposition 3-point percentage.
Mm,
If you can't defend the 3-point line, you don't have a shot at it. And the reason it's so important is it's a mindset.
mm.
It's an absolute mindset of saying I'm not going to let you get rhythm 3-point shots. Even if you miss them early, I'm not going to let you get them. I don't see that mindset in Caledonia at the moment.
And the final game, Cheshire Phoenix 92, Bristol Flyers 86. Nick's leading this one. Obviously, there's still all the absentees that there were. Nick's leading early on, but a couple of Sheffield threes, three-quarter court heave on the buzzer from Samuels, and Flyers are 22-27 ahead. And it was at that point that I was thinking, man, if a shot like that goes in, and you've lost Sheffield twice when he hit 6 threes last week, or however many
Yeah.
threes it was last week, this could be a long evening for Cheshire.
Yeah, well, firstly, it broke what I thought was an immutable basketball rule, which I've never seen a kind of an overhead kind of football style throw
Yeah,
in.
yeah. It
Every long
was
shot I've ever
random,
seen has
wasn't it?
been one of them, but
Yeah.
he kind of threw it like that. I'm like, okay, I have to rethink my entire basketball value system now. Thank you, Corey Samuels. Um, the thing with Cheshire is that there's been a lot of drama.
Mm,
Right. I mean, and a lot of I mean, they lost five in a row lost on Sunday night. By Monday morning, two of the guys have been kicked out for allegedly unprofessional behaviour or something like that, club standards. One assumes that that wasn't on Sunday night. One assumes that that has taken place a little bit before Sunday night to kick them out on Monday morning, which means that players have been playing with that over their heads or whatever, you know. So kind of the whole thing and a little bit of unease and a little bit of stuff like that can change the dynamic of a team very, very quickly. So whatever happened, they chose to cut their losses, and obviously there's a lot of wailing from the Cheshire fans, and particularly in relation to Kristen. Then there's a kind of a statement from James, the GM, which is kind of very heartfelt, kind of bit, which all the fans from every club seem to love.
mm,
And my cynical thought was, oh, it's all a bit dramatic, isn't it?
mm,
A bit too Real Housewives for me. And because my experience tells me that the most successful seasons comes from teams that don't get too high or too low,
mm,
right? And so they clearly, big low, lost the semi-final to them at Bristol. They had a shot at it, wanted to be in the final, the trophies, their competition, all that stuff. A couple of guys gone, whatever. Lots of outpouring of love and emotion and all that stuff. Then they come back to play the same team next Sunday.
mm,
Now, if you're going to ride that emotion that way, then this is an up game.
mm,
This is an up game. We're coming together. We're short-handed. Jack's going to come on the court. Cam, you're going. This is all we've got, guys. It's kind of us against the world. All this
mm,
stuff. You know, and I've been there multiple times. Believe me. In the locker room in Newcastle with like giving that speech. We are basically the phrase is we are all we need.
mm,
Yeah, and so. I thought they played harder than Bristol in this game. I don't think Bristol slacked, to be frank. I'm not saying they didn't play hard, but I thought there was a bit of that extra edge in this game for Cheshire. And I thought the fact that, the first four possessions of the game, Holden's down in the post,
mm,
right, that's making a statement. Right? That's Holden saying, we're winning this game. You're going to give me the ball. I'm going to score. We're going to go from there, setting the tone. And that's because it's a personal game to them.
mm,
They lost to that team twice. They lost on their own court. They didn't get to the final, which they wanted to get to, and now they're short-handed. So those guys, it's all about them. And so you saw Aitel Rock playing harder and making shots. You saw Holden running the game. You saw Ulf come in and rebound everything. I just thought there was a little bit more else. But Bristol, who played a lot of games, Robinson gets a couple of ticky-tack fouls early on, doesn't play the first half. That hurts them, right? Because they are they have benefited obviously in the past 3 weeks from Andreas' decision to get rid of Tennyson.
mm,
Even though this did sign another guy, he hasn't really played much. He got hurt,
mm,
but that is an example of addition by subtraction because you can see the rest of them have come together. The rest of them are playing. I think have been playing more competitively and better. Their defense has been better. Thomas Edwards getting more minutes. Um, McCormack playing a little bit more. We Owen as we call him. From the wee Owen from the Glens, um, playing more. So that's why sometimes you do get rid of players and the team gets better,
mm,
and that's happened. But I think this game was just kind of one emotion game too many.
mm,
Out of the they've had to fight for the game in Essex on Friday. They've played in double overtime and they've had two semi-final games, and I just didn't quite see that thing. Now, the other thing to that was the whole game. Cheshire defended Keady Johnson better, and they
mm,
defended him differently. But what I mean by that is on the high screen, they kept him to his left quite a lot, which is good. But on the high screen, the big guy was
mm,
showing far higher than they had been previously, which basically forces Johnson to pick the ball up earlier. Yeah. And that means you're making Johnson into a passer as opposed to allowing him to get two steps his shoulder pass, whereby you have to foul him.
Yeah.
And I thought that adjustment really worked for them. And Bristol didn't without Robinson in the game as well. When Johnson was forced to become a passer, they struggled to create as easy offense as they had previously because of the way that Johnson was guarded.
Uh, Cheshire kind of stayed ahead in the second quarter. They traded scores, and then two Idle Rock threes in the third pushed it out to 60, 51. But then there was that moment in the fourth quarter. Johnson and Sheffield hit threes. 4.5 minutes ago, it's a 1 point game, and you wondered whether the fatigue of being men down and playing second time in less than
Yeah.
24 hours because it was
Well,
so
I
flat.
don't count. I mean, to be honest, I don't count the Saturday night game as a game. That might sound really harsh. I count that as a warm up. Because if you're winning by 40, the coach is playing you 20 minutes, 25 minutes at most, and everybody's feeling good about themselves because you won by 40. I think that's an addition, a helpful game, as opposed to anything else. But with that roster, with effectively three Americans, Cheshire are never going to blow Bristol out.
Mm,
And this was a normal basketball game. It was a normal basketball game because Cheshire didn't have all the bodies to throw on the court to speed it up to make it helter-skelter.
mm.
And
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have to deal with what
yeah,
they had. You've
yeah,
got
yeah.
Greg
And
Wild was
you
starting.
kind of wonder
That's good
whether
for the
actually
kid.
that sort of helps the Atwoods. It certainly, obviously, it
Oh,
helps
I'm sure it
Wild.
does.
It
I
helps
that
Ulf.
was
It
my next
helps,
point. Yes,
yeah. Whether it
absolutely, it
even
helps
helps
the
somebody
Atwoods.
like Idle Rock.
I think it does
Mm,
because he's a half court player primarily. RJ Rock,
mm,
he's an excellent shooter. He's a corner. He's a catch and shoot guy, but he's also a kind of a shoulder pass jump stop guy. I think it helps him. And he's playing. That's
yeah,
the other
yeah,
thing. He's
yeah,
playing.
yeah,
He
yeah.
played 35 minutes. His games this year he played six.
Mm,
Now, as a player, that's all you want, the
mm,
opportunity. If you get those 35 minutes, you got to make plays. Otherwise, you can't
yeah.
win from the bench about not playing. So I think it does. And even Skylar White, I think it kind of helps because I know we get in this kind. Skylar White is a trail 3 point shooter, but he's not an up and down the court kind of 90 miles an hour guy. And Ben only plays him, 22, 24 minutes. So I think that team they became a more normal basketball team, and obviously without Austin, you can slow down as well, and that allowed them to grind the game out,
Mm.
and they did grind the game out. They made obviously it's a tie game with 2 minutes to go, but you just always felt that they had the ability they were going to make the plays, particularly when Robinson fouled out.
Yeah. Basically, it was four plays in the last 70 seconds. White three at the top, Scott Grayson and one, Holden steal, Holden block.
Yeah, I thought Holden's biggest play of the whole game was flopping his head back when Robinson put his hand across his kind of shoulder area for the fifth foul. I thought that was a weak call. I'll
Oh,
be
I thought that
honest.
was a foul. I thought
No,
it
I
was
thought
a
it was a
foul.
weak call. You thought you fouled because you look at his head, it's his head.
Mm,
Moves his head back, but he doesn't hit him on the head.
mm,
He kind of puts his arm there. And if we're going to call all of that stuff, as I say, if he makes contact above his shoulders, so be it. But if we're going to call all that off the ball stuff, which I've already had a reel about in the last Newcastle game,
mm,
I thought that was a bit cheap at that time of the game. It's one where you can call it, you can not call it. But in the event, Robinson never really been in the rhythm. Now, Robinson was hurting them down low because they couldn't guard him down low once kind of they took away the penetration. Bristol's alternative was to throw it down to Robinson on the ball reversal. And they did that a couple of times and he was able to score the ball. And I think losing him hurt them because it brought McCormack had to come into the game. Defensively, he's not quite as good as Robinson. And he was the one who gave up the foul on the 3 point play for Holden, maybe?
Scott Grayson.
For Scott Grayson. Um, and that play was the one that sealed the game because that made it a 5 point game. But it was Scott Grayson in the screen roll at the top, and McCormack was a little bit out and had to put two hands on him as he was driving.
Mm,
That was a good call, and that kind of that play changed the game. But I'm not sure that happens if Robinson's not there. So, it's game of small margins at times. I mean,
it
obviously,
is.
if Samuels doesn't make that three at the end of the first quarter, it's not close anyway. So
Mm,
so the whole thing is swings and roundabouts. But I
mm,
thought Cheshire deserved to win because I just thought they played a little bit like it meant a little bit more to them. I think it
mm,
probably did,
mm.
just a little bit more.
Scott Grayson, 27.7 rebounds. Rock 18 points. Holden, 16.7 rebounds, six assists. And actually, they'd have won the game comfortably if they didn't shoot 13 of 25 from the free throw line.
Yeah, and it's just people fans will watch games and they'll just kind of see the game out in front of them and players making plays and it all goes very very quickly and I get that. But there are things to look for, right? Now they gave up 17 foul shots to Keely Johnson last
Mm,
week, right? And you have the odd, oh, the refs did this, the refs did that. It ain't the refs, right? You gave up 17 foul shots because you were defending him in a certain way and you weren't ready for it. This week, Keely Johnson's running the same plays, doing the same things,
two of
right?
two from the free throw line.
Two of two, because they defend him in a different way.
Mm,
Now, that might be a question of a couple of steps. It might be a question of the big guy on the screen being more aware of where he has to be. It might be being proactive as opposed to reactive. Little stuff. Little stuff makes, that changes the game. 15 fouls just for Keely
mm,
Johnson, right? So you gave up 108 last week because you couldn't keep him off the foul line because you couldn't defend with discipline. Today, in this game, you gave up 80 plus because you could,
mm,
and so it's rarely about the refs. It really, and it might make it sound a bit weird me saying that. It's rarely about the refs. It's the way the teams defend each other, the way the teams respect each other, and the level of intensity and presence that they have on the court.
mm,
And that was just one little change. And you say, well, why couldn't they have done that last week? Well, last week, maybe the mindset wasn't quite right.
mm.
Last week, maybe they were thinking they can run them down. They've got all these players. Last week, they've got two
Maybe you
guys
have to learn
fighting
the
together.
lesson of 17 free throws. So,
Exactly. You've got to see it happen to you.
yeah, yeah.
And also, on top of that, maybe there's a couple of the players I think we may not be here on Monday morning.
Mm,
There's all sorts of stuff about how that can impact the locker room, all sorts of stuff, which leads to kind of not being fully physically committed to the game that you're playing in front of you, even though you think you are. The players think they are,
mm,
but it only takes a quarter of a step for them to be late. And Keely Johnson is, and you get 17 foul shots and 28 points, and they win the game.
mm,
So, it swings and roundabouts of how teams develop from game to game, week to week, and how they do little things, subtle things differently. That didn't happen by chance. I suppose that's what I'm saying. It didn't happen
yeah.
by chance. They did that. They looked at the tape and they did that in a certain way. Just like Leicester's win over Newcastle didn't happen by chance. They looked at the tape and they changed things up in relation to stuff that Newcastle were running. There's a lot of stuff goes on behind the scenes that people don't see.
Mm. Johnson 14, Sheffield 14, 4 of 8 for 3. Robinson 13 points, 15 minutes, 5 fouls. 11
Mhm.
of 16 was the total foul count for free throw count for Bristol. Obviously, 26 of 28 was it last week? So
Yeah. Well,
it's 15 points
I
difference.
tell you, if you look at the foul shot numbers at the end of any game, they'll generally tell you a story of the game.
Mm, mm,
It really is rare that team with a massive advantage in foul shots wins. It's threes and fouls.
mm,
Twos don't beat you, threes and fouls do.
mm. So that brings us to the end of this week's action. Let's have a look at the table. Sheffield still top of the table, 6 and 2. London 5 and 2. Leicester and Newcastle both have 4 wins and 2 defeats. Cheshire are 3 and 3. Surrey at 3 and 4. Bristol 2 and 3, and Manchester off the bottom 1 and 5. Caledonia outside the playoff places. Can we say that in December? I don't know.
Mhm.
1 and 6.
Yeah, I mean that's really about the top team is 6 and 2, the lowest team is 1 and 6.
Mm,
Everybody else is kind of concertinaed in between.
mm.
I thought the graphics person at the Leicester Newcastle game was a bit presumptive, putting up the halftime table as if Leicester had already won. Um,
Oh, I missed that bit.
oh, you missed that. Yeah, Leicester were
Yeah.
4 and 2 at half time. I thought that was impressive.
Oh, were they?
And Newcastle were 4 and 2 at half time as well. I'm thinking, you know where this game is going. Um, so it must have been because they
Must have
must have.
been as live. Must have been an as
Yeah,
live
well,
table.
it
They
was
used
one
to
of the
do
ones.
that last
Obviously, the
year, and I
halftime score had been plugged in as if it had been
yeah,
a
yeah,
or whatever, so it's come
yeah.
up automatically. But no, I mean
You know how
6.
they do in football and it moves, and
Yeah,
they
yeah,
did it last year. I think it's something to do with the Genius graphics
yeah. I'm
because they
sure.
did it last year, and I was like, oh, I'm not sure about an as live table.
No, I don't like it. But anyway, 6 and 2, 5 and 2, and two 4 and 2s.
Yeah,
I mean that's a pretty good start.
yeah, it is.
We're
Yeah.
all, pretty good start, and we're going to get some meaningful games this year. If the team, and I think the teams are quite keen on winning the league.
Looks like it.
Yeah, I don't think they're seeing it as kind of just a precursor to the playoffs, which is what it was sold as last year because everyone knew London were going to win it, so we didn't have to worry about
Yeah.
it. But now everybody's, kind of jockeying for position. So it'll be fun.
Should be good. Uh, so Dave and I will be back next Sunday night to do it all
Wow.
over again because I'm close enough to home that we
Oh yeah,
can.
we know who pays more than more between Cheshire and Leicester, don't we? Anyway.
The the reality was that
Yeah,
game was
right.
in the schedule in September when I said when
Yeah,
I
yeah,
agreed everything,
yeah,
and
yeah.
now Leicester versus Newcastle got moved into the schedule where it wasn't originally, and I'm not a
Find it.
person who goes back on my word when I say
I
I'm
find
going
it
to go do
disgraceful. I
that.
mean, yes, you're waving off Leicester while you're getting all these presents and stuff from the fans, and you can't even be bothered to show your face for a couple of extra pieces of silver in Ellesmere Port. Dear
I
me.
agreed. I agreed to do a game in September. I'm not reneging on that
Yeah,
agreement.
okay. So it's all wonderful. I'll believe you. Thousands won't. Others can be their own judge. No problem.
And on that slanderous note, we are going to call it an evening. So we'll be back next week to do it all over again. But for now, goodbye.
Bye, guys.